evening. Back in school, I learned about a lot of different interesting subjects, like math, science, literature. But in my opinion, there were certain things that were missing in my traditional education, certain skill sets that in our generation today are mission critical to our success. Skills like public speaking, being able to stand in front of an audience, share some ideas in a way that's confident and clear. That was never taught to me in school. Or entrepreneurship, learning about the importance of taking risks in business and other subjects is absolutely essential to succeed today. But that also was missing. And networking, being able to meet people and introduce yourself and get to know someone and build a relationship, so important, yet I had to look to my parents and other sources to learn these skills. And so let's take a look at how Google defines networking: to interact with others, to exchange information, and develop professional or social contacts. Now, that's a good definition. It isn't wrong, but I believe that a key word is missing: the word relationship. The way I define networking is the process one goes through to develop genuine relationships with the intention of finding honest ways to help or add value to another person in the short or long term. So let's just take a look at what networking definitely is not. It's not going on LinkedIn and adding hundreds of people that you don't really know. That's incredibly obnoxious and a form of spamming. No one likes that. I mean, I can definitely relate to that experience. I mean, if I look at my own personal LinkedIn account, I've got over 384 requests. I've done a fair bit of networking, gone to a lot of different events, but I don't know a fraction of the people who have added me. And I don't plan on accepting them because that isn't a way of bonding with people. And so going to other different types of events in person, it's definitely not a strategy to go around handing hundreds of business cards out to people, being able to, that's not building a relationship, that's bothering people. And if you think that handing a card to someone and expecting them to be able to follow up with you, it's not sustainable, it won't work. And lastly, right swiping as fast as you can on Tinder is definitely not building relationships. I personally don't have any experience with that, of course, but it's definitely not sustainable and I don't recommend it. So now I want to talk a little bit about an experience, a story of how I was able to harness the power of networking to close a sale with a multinational company with a startup that I had started in high school. And so it all began with, well, a bit of a background is I started a company called NutKase Accessories when I was 17. And what we did is we designed an iPad case that had a very specific feature. We eliminated the risk of the iPad falling by developing a cross-strap design that you could hold on to very comfortably. And what we realized was with this product, the best market for us to enter in the early days were schools. We saw an incredible opportunity selling iPad cases and computer accessories into private schools around the world. And we developed a great business doing that. Now, in order to expand the business and to take it to the next level, we were looking for other opportunities, other businesses or customers that were complementary in a way. And we realized that going into corporates and selling our cases to sales reps was a really great way forward. But we had no idea how to go about doing it. And that's where networking came in. So through a family friend, I was introduced to a woman named Judy. I wasn't told really what she was interested in, but she wanted to meet and have a coffee. So I was 18, I met with her. We had a chat, and I started listening and showing interest in what she was saying. And it turned out that she was working on an iPad deployment project. She was going to be deploying thousands of iPads around the world to all her different divisions within Unilever. Now, the biggest pain that she was experiencing with this process was that they were trying to understand how to manage what apps were going to be on the iPads when they were given to the sales reps. And I was listening, asking questions, showing interest, and she ended up asking me to volunteer pretty much and make a research study what iPad apps could be the best to give to their employees. And I was thrilled. I didn't know what would come from it. I didn't ask for any form of compensation. I was just genuinely interested in helping this person and working on this cool project. So a few months later, I delivered the result, and they were very impressed. And they ended up a few days later calling me up and asking me about another problem that they were experiencing. They didn't know what cases to give to their employees. So they asked me if I could do some sort of study that could understand which would be the best cases for their teams. And so I showed them the Apple case, minimal, sleek, made out of leather. It was a high-end product, but too expensive. I then showed them the bumper case, this very shock-absorbing case that you could throw on the ground and it wouldn't break, but it was too big. It couldn't fit into an employee's rucksack or briefcase. And then, of course, I showed them my product, the NutKase. It had a cross-strap design. It solved a serious problem that I knew they were going to have. And to make a long story short, they ended up buying cases from me, and we, as a small startup of only about 2 years old, were able to sell to a massive customer like that. And looking back at that experience, it was incredible that the biggest lesson I learned from it was I have to help out. I have to genuinely want to help someone out and not always look for something in return. I have to invest in a relationship that isn't just focused on the short term, but on this long-term vision. And secondly, don't try and sell something immediately. That was definitely the most important thing here. I was just interested in helping this person out, and eventually she was the one to come back to me and ask for help on an iPad project, which is what allowed me to end up selling my product. But I wasn't the one going after it and trying to sell that case to her. She was the one to come and ask me for advice on the subject. And so my second story is a little bit more about my experience on how I was able to essentially meet someone in line at a Costa Coffee in England, and that led me into essentially moving to California and starting a company out there. And it all began in England. For a period of my life, I was based out of Lancaster in the north. Rainy, not the best food. This is definitely an exception to the rule. I mean, this is probably the best weather the UK's ever seen. And I can attest to that. I had to live in the north for about a year. And so one day I was standing in line in the business school, and I was just hanging out, minding my own business, and I saw this beautiful red leather briefcase in front of me. It was a great bag. I was like, wow, that's a good looking bag. So I just tapped on this guy's, excuse me, where'd you get this bag? And we just started striking a conversation up, and there was this guy named Antti, this Finnish dude who was just in the same department as me. We became friends, we started chatting, and a few months later, he ended up asking me to come with him to Estonia, to Tallinn, the capital of Estonia, and participate in a business conference where they wanted me to come and give a talk about startups and entrepreneurship to 150 MBA students. I was 19, I had no experience, I wasn't exactly, I was quite afraid actually of this weird opportunity, but I said, what the heck, what's the worst that can happen? Let's just go for it. So I did, and I ended up meeting in the crowd, in the audience, a person that told me about this program in Silicon Valley, a program called Draper University, which is a school for entrepreneurs founded by this venture capitalist named Tim Draper. And he told me all about this program, and I knew that's exactly where I needed to be. I needed to be in that program in California. And by making that introduction, meeting this random person in the crowd, I ended up saying sayonara to England and hopped on a flight and moved to California. And it was just supposed to be an 8-week experience working in Silicon Valley, in this program, but it turned into a 2-year adventure that changed my life entirely and allowed me to start a company there and get funding, and it was just a game changer. But it all came by just reaching out into the audience, getting to know people around me, and showing genuine interest. And so by going to California and living in this incredible environment that revolves around technology and innovation, that was where I started connecting the dots. I started seeing new ideas, new technologies that were taking off in the Bay Area. And during my trips back to Italy, back to Rome, where my family was still living, I started seeing all these problems that needed solving. And one day, waiting at the bus, I was waiting for the 75. It wasn't coming. It was 30 minutes late. And I kept on seeing scooters driving by me constantly, hundreds of scooters. And I kept on asking myself, how can I be waiting for the bus when there's so many scooters driving by and they only have one person on board? And so that was how the idea for Scooterino was born. A new startup that essentially allows somebody to hitch a ride on the back of a scooter and pay a small expense reimbursement, kind of like BlaBlaCar, but for scooters. And I ended up deciding to move back from California to Italy and start this new adventure. Once again, it all came from introducing myself and developing small relationships with people. And so I want to just leave three big takeaways, three of my biggest experiences. And the first one is definitely less but better. It's so easy to get overwhelmed when you're at awesome events like this, when there's so many people around you, and you want to meet everybody. Unfortunately, it's impossible to meet everybody in the crowd. So my policy, my personal rule is less but better. If you're able to identify a few really interesting people and invest in getting to know them, asking them questions, helping them open up to you, that is so much more valuable than trying to go around, meet everyone, and giving out business cards left and right, and saying, I'll email you in a few weeks, let's follow up, let's keep in touch. There's no value in that. That doesn't help anybody, and it definitely won't help you developing a new relationship. So when it comes to networking, when it comes to meeting new people, when it comes to going to events like this, I always try and apply that policy of less but better. My second one is don't do all the talking. I can't tell you how many times, we're in Italy. We love to talk, it's part of the culture, I get that. But I can't tell you how many times I've gone to events and I've been in meetings and conferences, and there's always somebody just talking and talking about themselves relentlessly. It's so obnoxious. And I just ask myself, the way I see it is, we know what we have to say. We as individuals, we already know what we know, we already know what we have to say, but we have no idea what the other person has to share. We have no idea what their story is, what their interests are, what motivates them. And I try my best to not talk as much as I do. I try my best to listen, because that's where I learn. And so that's definitely my second biggest takeaway for learning how to network effectively, is don't do all the talking, show interest, and listen as much as possible. And lastly, the more you give, the more you receive. Now, when I'm meeting people, when I'm getting to know somebody, I'm constantly asking myself, what drives this person? What do they love? What are they passionate about? What do they want to achieve? And what I try to do, it's not easy. It's not easy. You got to really think about it. As you're speaking to you, as you're speaking to someone, is you're going in your head, what can I do to help this person? How can I add value to their life? What do they really want? And in the moment, I try and offer ideas. I try to give suggestions. I try and add value in some way. And by offering to help, by offering to do something like that, you create a much deeper bond with that individual. And what happens is this mechanism of reciprocity will kick in eventually. And what that means is, one day in the future, when you bump into that person again, when you do, connect with them on LinkedIn, and definitely connect with people who you do build relationships with on LinkedIn, you never know, they'll try and help you back. And it's that way of giving and receiving that really just makes the world go around. And it's definitely my third biggest takeaway with that. So that being said, networking is a fundamental part of our lives. Building relationships with people is mission critical to our success in our generation today. Thank you.